Hello, my name is Juan Carlos Acosta, and I am the artistic director of SACRA PROFANA. I am joined by my good friend and colleague, Shawn Kirchner, uh, who is a fan favorite of our audiences. Today, we are talking about his piece, America the Beautiful. So, welcome, Shawn.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is we just adore your music, and this piece in particular has just been a really special piece. We did it for our social change concert, although I think I first heard it with Tonality. Is that right?
Yeah, they were the first ones to have, yeah, they were the premiering choirs. So, yep.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So how did you come to write America the Beautiful?
Okay, so I think this one's a little bit of a funny and unexpected story. Um, I was supposed to write a piece for a men's choir in Arizona that I've worked with a little bit. I really like them. And if I recall, it was going to be for a 4th of July type thing, but it wasn't definite. If it was going to happen for sure. But my brain was kind of going along with patriotic things that would sound good with for men's choir. But then also, it was around the time when I had been working really hard, I think performing too much with Master Chorale and behind on things. And I remember saying, I am not going to compose again. Like, I'm done. I'm just tired. I'm done. And then about a week later, I suddenly heard this melody, bum, bum, ba, bum, ba, bum, ba, 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 da, dee, dee, dee. The opening line of America the Beautiful, coming with those words, with "Oh, beautiful for spacious skies." And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not done. I have to write at least one more piece in my life. Um, so I suddenly realized I had a piece. But then what started happening was I started realizing that I needed to write a transformed America the Beautiful. So that kind of changed the direction.
I don't even know how you would go about resetting, completely new musical setting of such iconic words, most often associated with that tune. So
Yeah.
tell me about that process.
Well, see, and that's the other thing is like a lot of people feel quite ambivalent about the national anthem in terms of both the text and the melody.
Mhm.
Um, but I think most people really like both the text and the melody of America the Beautiful, including me. I love it. Like I'm all for making that the national anthem.
Mm.
So I didn't write it because it's not good enough or whatever. It just kind of came as a whole alternate thing. And I think Catherine Lee Bates's words are handled beautifully.
Mhm.
The consistency of her word choices is very noble. There's a nobility to her language. Um, Now, my chorus does kind of pay a little bit of homage to the da da, the rising sixth. However, mine's on the, I displace it by half a measure, so it lands at the wrong time. America, America. I mean, if you sing it musically, it doesn't sound like that. But anyway, um, there was no antipathy.
Mhm.
Um, Rather, I was just inspired to do something different. But as I did start looking at the piece, I realized we can't say this anymore.
Mhm.
I mean, yes, the first verse is glorious about the beautiful landscape of this country in the Rocky Mountains. But by the time I got to the second verse, I couldn't do that anymore. And just to be specific about it, so the second verse of America the Beautiful is, "Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet whose stern impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness." And I just realized we can't sing that anymore because that that verse basically says nobody was here and nobody was free until the first pilgrims arrived. Whereas in fact, Native Americans have been here for 10,000 years.
Mhm.
And instead of settling the country from east to west, it was settled from north to south and west to east.
Mhm.
And their trails became the trails that pioneers and settlers used to go across the wilderness, um, which wasn't void and empty, but was actually filled with people and culture. Um, so I'm like, okay, yeah, so we've been in a reckoning time in our culture for a while.
Hmm.
Me Too was a reckoning.
Hmm.
Black Lives Matter has been a reckoning.
Hmm.
We're in a reckoning time. And
Hmm.
and and I think we're finally ready to state more truthfully, to be people of truth, to refer to another song that you guys have done, Man of Truth. We're grown up enough as a country that we can actually tell the actual truth about who's been here, who are the constituent groups who have separate migration patterns that have all brought them here. Now, what are we going to do about it? Because we're all here now.
Exactly. Yeah. And if I could just add a personal note, I think for me, performing that piece had a different sort of patriotic feeling than I've ever experienced doing, a plethora of patriotic music that choirs are tasked with, for those holidays. In part because it is one of the few pieces that kind of acknowledges our faults and still holds that we are a great country, and that all of those people have contributed to the greatness of the country, and so it did bring about a much different feeling.
Well, I want to give Catherine Lee Bates some credit for that, because God mend thine every flaw. She already had some of that conscientiousness in her. It wasn't like we're just the victors and everything
Mhm,
us, yay flag and yay us and rockets red glare. You know, she had introspection, which is a way that it differs from our national anthem.
mhm,
You know, and so I think the fact that she already had those lines for me paved a way that I could let the piece evolve and let it tell a truer story about who we are as a people. And because her words were so beautiful and crafted so beautifully, it was really easy to fit into her rhyme schemes. So
mhm.
just to maybe tell your audience a little bit more.
Please.
So instead of saying, "Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet," who, blazed a trail across the wilderness, I said instead, "Oh, beautiful that ancient feet beneath the countless stars, 10,000 years in beauty walked through wilderness unmarred." And then I have a bit about the European folks coming over, and fateful then that sailing fleets a new world sought and found, and whose bright promise wrought a doom whose echoes yet resound. Because their bright promise and a new beginning for them meant an ending for the Native Americans in some way. It was an ending of the life as they had always lived it.
Yeah.
So, um, the nobility and beauty of her language enabled me to find rhymes and ways to use parallel structures to fit into her template.
Yeah. And then you go on to speak about the African American experience as well, which is an
Yeah.
important
Well,
acknowledgement
and,
there.
and that's where I really kind of performed a jujitsu on the piece, because that word, the original verse is about the Revolutionary War. Oh,
Mm,
beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife. And I was just thinking, how do I talk about African American experience as a constituent part of our people? And then just the words liberating strife, when I thought of that phrase, I said, that's the civil rights movement. For people in our time,
mhm.
that is the liberating strife that we know about. So I found a way to just, no disrespect to the independence movement that gave rise to our country. And I finally just saw Hamilton for the first time, which tells that story. No disrespect, but I needed a way to also tell this other story that was completely missing.
Mhm.
And so, oh, sorrowful for captive feet. So I tried to use feet again. Oh, sorrowful for captive feet in chains against their will, who toiled through centuries of wrong to triumph still, whose heroes proved so beautiful in claims of lawful rights. I put claims of lawful rights instead of liberating strife, although I could have used that. Who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. And particularly that last phrase meant a lot to me, because the civil rights movement strove to be nonviolent. And
Mhm.
Martin Luther King's, you know, Christian influence and Gandhian influence all emphasize nonviolence. So if you're going to try to look for a liberating strife in the history of our country that loved mercy more than life, that nonviolent struggle is the one that did it more than any other one.
It's absolutely, I mean, a beautiful, beautiful part of that piece, and how you weave it all together. Um, Talk about the melodic structure. You know, the melody itself spans over 2 octaves. And it kind of we goes from one voice part to another to accomplish that. Was that an intentional construction? Because to me it speaks of that to articulate this melody, it has to be done in community, and that's very much like this country, to
Yeah.
achieve what we have accomplished, it is because of the many voices that have contributed to that conversation.
I love it that that's a possible interpretation. And that's what I find amazing about the creative process is because I actually don't have an answer.
Sure.
I don't have an answer of why that's how the melody formed. Um, in the accompaniment, I'm going to get back to the melody for a second, but I
Yeah,
want to go to
please.
the accompaniment. The accompaniment itself, I do ba 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 ba.
Mhm.
Alex Blake, who founded Tonality, the LA choir, social justice choir, he wrote about America the Beautiful, and he noticed that my accompaniment with that up and down looked like a mountain.
Mm.
And so he said, "Oh, is this Pikes Peak?" Because Catherine Lee Bates wrote it in the Rocky Mountains. So, but because of that idea, it makes me feel like the first verse is about, these mountains rising up. I'm from Iowa.
Mhm.
So I was on the floorboards of my car the first time my family got to South Dakota. That isn't even like really high mountains. I was so unused to altitude that I was on the floorboards of my car for safety as a 7-year-old child.
Oh my goodness.
This is a child of the Great Plains, I'm just telling you. Okay, no pride. but but what I want to talk to you about is I know what it's like to go from Iowa through Nebraska to eastern Colorado and to see the Rockies rise up in front of you. Because I did that for the first time when I was 12 with my
Yeah.
family on vacation. And so I know exactly what it's like to see these mountain majesties rise up when all you've ever seen in your life is flat, rolling Iowa farmland.
Mhm.
And so I think there's also a part of me that really respects what mountains are. And so that melody that starts all the way down and then just winds its way up to this top 2 octaves high, it's also a way of expressing the majesty of a mountain. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
where the melody came from, but I think I love it that it takes multiple people to sing it. And I also love it that it just shows grandeur and loftiness and vastness.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fantastic. And then maybe talk about the structure of the piece, because um, though the melody more or less stays the same, you really alter the structure and the feel of each verse. I mean, you really encapsulate the text for the character of the text for each verse.
Yeah, so that basic ba 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 bum ba 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 ba, there's kind of like these
Mhm.
loops that come at higher successions. When the women start the second verse, which is about Native American experience, they repeat exactly as the men do. But then I have the men interrupt,
Mhm.
which is exactly what happened. 1492 was an interruption
Mhm.
of life as it had been. And what they do with the melody, instead of repeating it the same way, they go ba bum bum ba. Instead of going down, they turn the corner and go a different way. So I'm not saying that I consciously did it on purpose to paint that, but I needed it to do something different.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's an example of I'm just showing that there's this rupture of what has been with this new direction. For the third verse, for African American experience, the melody really hangs low and
Mhm.
quiet because you're honestly talking about slave ships across the Atlantic at that point. Oh, sorrowful for captive feet in chains against their will. So I was just thinking about the lowness of being down in a ship. Um, just yeah, the debasement of a human being to be put into that position. So just the sorrowfulness and just it just had to be low and quiet and solemn. because how do you even look at that topic without the utmost gravity and shame inside yourself? So, yeah, so the melody reflects that. But then for the fourth verse, which is about us all moving ahead, then it returns and everybody sings that 2-octave melody together.
That's right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, did you originally write the piece for Tonality? Was that the first group to write it for, or was it
No,
for somebody else?
well, I just wrote it to write it,
Hmm.
um, because I kind of had the idea and I really wanted to write it. But then I think Alex was at my house. We were meeting or something, and I just kind of showed it to him a little bit. And I think we got to the first chorus, and he said, yes.
Absolutely.
There's a place where pa, 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 I let the piano does a half step higher. There's a little bit of a this aching little dissonance that comes in, and it just kind of gets you a little bit.
Hmm.
And I think Alex really felt that moment, and he said, "We're going to do this song." And I'm like, and it was so wonderful to have a group to sing it, and what a perfect group. Um, Tonality is so diverse with constituent members from all of the groups that are being talked about in this new transformed America the Beautiful. So they were the perfect choir to premiere it.
Absolutely. And who else, to your knowledge, that has gone on to perform this piece?
Oh golly. Well, I'm super grateful that you guys have. Oh, we've done it in some festivals where I've taken it. So
Hmm.
I had a festival in Wisconsin where it was new to folks. And again, what I love is the idea that it provokes conversation. We had some amazing conversations about it. I mean, it's a little bit of a new piece, so I think it's
Hmm.
still kind of getting discovered. And then of course we've hit the pandemic, so it has not been widely performed yet. Um, I'm my fingers are crossed that I think Grant Gershon has his eye on it for a master chorale concert
Hmm.
coming up, um, relating to themes of unity and things like that. So anyway, um, I'm hoping that it kind of starts making some inroads, but it takes a while for a piece to kind of find its legs.
Absolutely. Well, it was playing practically on repeat in my mind between January 6th and the inauguration. This idea of America that is broken but still has ideals that are worth holding on to really spoke to me. And it's a shame that we weren't able to perform in person or sing together in person, because I think it would have been just the perfect piece for that time. But yeah, I
Well, yeah, and I think also there's a responsibility that we have who are comfortable with America or with the United States being a multiracial country. Because um, when I was in college, I wrote this poem that had a final line, which was, I will not be led where I do not foresee joy. And I think we have a responsibility to show folks who are nervous about fully sharing this country and sharing its opportunities that it doesn't need to feel like a loss to you. It's a gain
Mhm.
because you get to gain your kinship with all these folks, and you get to be enriched by them and they get to be enriched by you. There's no loss. So for us to show the joy that we have in being part of multiracial and healing situations, we have a responsibility to show that it's a good, bright future for everybody. I am just so appreciative of the leadership that you all have shown with your choir at making strong statements and doing music that really speaks to important issues of the direction we need to be moving. And yeah, you guys are really holding up the banner beautifully
Thank
down
you.
your way.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate it. Oftentimes as artists, it feels like we have so little ability to affect change. And so this concert was really about, doing the music that speaks to that. So we were privileged to be able to do your pieces on that concert.
Yeah, and I mean, I believe I've seen you all's beautiful performance of this. It really, really touched me to see your rendition of America the Beautiful.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the piece.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you for your time, Sean. We can't wait to have the next opportunity to see you in person and perform your works. So thank you.
More.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.